Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Frank and Stan chat. And we have quite a big session today. This is a very important event because we never thought we'd get this far. So good morning, Stan. How are you?
Good morning and happy 50th edition.
Yes. When I saw that initially, I thought it was you were trying to convince us that was your age.
I wish.
It was only then that you reminded me that this is the half century. Yeah, so it's just Stan and Frank today. We had an amazing response to last week's though, Stan. We had, I think, probably, I said before, probably 4 times as many viewers and watchers, listeners to last week's chat than we normally have. So that's a real credit to Ros McMullen.
And it was good to do, wasn't it? I mean, I think I put on a tweet that we carried on the conversation for another half hour after that. It was
a shame I pressed the stop on the record button, wouldn't it? I mean, I think that, yeah, there was a lot of stuff in the second half. I mean, it may well be that we'll invite Ros back and try and replicate the second half of the discussion that none of you have seen. But anyway, it's been a little bit quieter in education this week, but it's not stopped us thinking about a few things that we want to cover. So what's caught your eye this week, apart from a new static caravan, Stan?
Yeah, that's caught my wallet more than my eye. Well, an old chestnut that's raised its head again about spelling, and I think it's to do with Hull University, I think. But the premise was that if you mark spelling, you're somehow being elitist. Now, I don't hold with that, but it does remind me of something that Michael Gove brought in or introduced, which I didn't agree with, which was that you mark down for spelling in all subjects. So if you are a historian or a mathematician and you happen to be dyslexic, you can't be a historian or a successful mathematician. It doesn't make sense. No. And it's back to that. What are we testing people for? If we're testing them for knowledge, then the fact that they can't spell some common words doesn't measure whether they've got knowledge or not, or understand it. I don't know. It's one that always comes around, and it's part of the behaviour thing, isn't it? It's the whole bit about behaviour, silence on corridors.
It's control. It's power. It's control. It's a sense of we know what is right and what is good, as if that isn't open to debate in a way.
Well, it's how it was when we went to school, so that must be right.
I know. Well, actually, I want to pick up on that point that you made about spelling, but it relates to something for me around. I think I've mentioned to you before that my 9-year-old granddaughter, when we do childcare, she comes onto this computer and uses the dictation facility because it's quicker to do that than to actually press the keyboard. And when you think about the future, keyboards, I mean, seriously, people talk to this, these remote devices and say, what's the weather going to be like today, Alexis? They don't tap it into a computer anymore. We've just got to sort of move with the times and get ahead of it. I do understand that children, need to be able to spell. There needs to be a level of confidence, but actually, if we're looking for the future generations and the work they're going to do, this is really old hat. It feels really, really out of sync with what
all you need to do is look down at your keyboard, Frank. It's a QWERTY keyboard, I'll bet. And the QWERTY keyboard was designed because the less frequent letters didn't travel as far on the typewriter swing, or traveled the furthest on the typewriter swing. So that's why we got a QWERTY, and we've never been able to get away from it because people have been trained to use it. Train everybody.
But actually, bearing in mind, as I said when I was teaching Eleanor how to use this facility, she was astounded that it was there, because in schools they're still using the keyboard. When actually, the great ideas, the great thinking, which is what we want, actually can be conveyed much more quickly and recorded by just talking, which is what we're doing today. So I think the point though about spelling, I don't want to lose sight of this, is the thing that frustrates me is this idea that ministers or government seem to think that they can interfere with those operational aspects of education. To me, that it's up to, if Hull University have taken that stance, that it's not going to be a key factor in whatever exam it is, then actually I think that's for them to make that decision, and to explain it to their students and to those people, and the qualification mechanism that sits behind this, and actually this sort of interference is something that just irritates and is unhelpful because it's made by people who don't really know. I mean,
and then what it does is it winds up the masses of people who get angry, and if you ask
me,
why are you angry about this? It doesn't affect you at all. It's about some exams in the Hull. Why are you going on about it? And it's that effect that it has. It's like the statues thing. It's like, why do people get so enraged so quickly at the Hull?
Yeah. But I think though that this is driven. I mean, nobody would have known. Nobody would really have been that too bothered about it. It would have been an operational decision for Hull University unless a minister stepped in to say something.
Yeah.
As soon as they do that, then it becomes newsworthy. I mean, I think the thing for me, it links in a little bit though, Stan, with one of the themes that I picked up on this week, which is really this green seal capital. And in a way, there is this sort of line whereby clearly there are occasions when you feel as though, well, I want to say something about something, or I want to influence something, but actually I feel as though it's probably not my place. There are many times when I feel as though I should tweet something, but actually I think to myself, well, I don't really know very much about this. I'm not really adding much to it. I really should just shut up and just put my hands down and say, right, that's going to wash over me. But it's that bit here where I think the green seal capital, there's this sort of like vague, the boundaries have become very vague. And I'm not saying this is for every politician. I mean, there were a number of Tory MPs who stood up and were not happy, were very shocked by what they were seeing. But actually, this goes back to spelling as well, doesn't it? That, when ministers think that they can interfere or comment on or get close to or influence the operational aspects of schooling, isn't that very close to where we are with green seal capital, where actually I'm just going to nudge up to this politician because actually I'm not quite sure where the boundaries are here, so what the heck, I'm just going to say it anyway. And actually there you find yourself in a position where you shouldn't be, where you're seen to be, well, lobbying. Somebody called it corruption, but anyway, but whatever. I think we do lobbying. Isn't this lobbying?
Yeah. I think that's what the problem is at the moment. That it's been described as lobbying. That's right. And there's nothing. Lobbying is about how democracy works. You go to your. The House of Parliament has the first place you go into is the lobby, where you can, in theory, demand to speak to your MP.
Yes.
And tell them what the issues are. So that's technically, well, that is what lobbying is. But when lobbying becomes professional and when lobbying becomes linked to personal gain, that's where, that's one, I think that's one barrier. And the other one is when, because of positions in government you've had previously, you have relationships with people who can make those decisions, then there's another barrier there that needs putting in place. And I don't know what the answer is, and I don't know what the rules would need to be, but it feels wrong. And I think even David Cameron said it smells wrong.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I do remember, I won't tell you the school, but actually I was approached by a governor who said to me, this was when I was ahead, I've got an apartment in Mallorca or somewhere or other. Perhaps you and the family would like to use it during half term. And half of me was saying, well, that would be fantastic, but actually you get to a point where you think, no, there's something not quite right here. This could really come back and bite me. And in a way, there's this, these sorts of things that which are around education. There are things here where your sort of ethical barometer is telling you this isn't a good place to go. Just a feeling. You can't rationalize it. You just feel as though it's not the right thing to do. There was also a very interesting. I don't like the way he does it, but is it Warwick Mansell, who's an investigative journalist? Obviously doesn't like academies, which actually, for me, who was a CEO of Academy Trust, I would say there are some academies that I would work for and some that I wouldn't. But similarly, there are some local authorities schools that I would work in and others that I wouldn't. But he did some interesting work around investigation into two trustees who have set up an arrangement within their trust whereby they can be or have been employed as independent people. I think they're saying subject to scrutiny and subject to fair competition, whatever. But that for me doesn't feel right. Whatever that fair competition is, then they cannot have been the only two people that could have offered those services. But that's another example whereby it gets all very, very murky. It becomes very cloudy. Where does your role as a trustee and stop and start, and what if the services you provide don't deliver? Are the trustees going to be critical of the trustees? It's really these sorts of things should not happen.
No, but it's about being transparent, isn't it? I mean, as well as because I'm a governor, I declare the fact that I have an education company. But if anything comes up that I think somebody could say X, Y, and Z about that, I always make a point of saying I just want to declare an interest. If the governors want me to not take part in this part of the meeting,
yes.
that's fine.
But also, you would never tender for work, would you?
Not if I was a mat. I don't. I mean, I do work with schools, so there is a good
with that particular school. In a way, it wouldn't be right.
I've done staff meetings, but I do those at no cost.
Yes,
because it's the school where I'm a governor. So
yeah. Well, that's a natural thing to do, isn't it? For your expertise to be drawn in that way. But it's this murky, this sort of murky sort of feel, and actually it does stench a little bit. Well, more than a little. And the worry is that although we're reassured by civil servants that they don't think this is going very deep, that this will be quite a sort of that it will be isolated. Bearing in mind this is going back to, was it 2012? That's a long way to go back. If there is a serious review of this, I am concerned that there will be many more out there.
But there won't be a serious review, will there? Because I think there are 7 investigations already triggered, and they'll all fall over each other to try and be either the quickest or the first to get a report out, and it just won't. It was interesting on the news last night. I think that the suggestion was that if Boris Johnson had just ignored it in the first instance, this would have just gone away. It wouldn't be the issue it is. Because I suspect because there are lots of other people at that level who influence, rightly or wrongly, for gain.
But I think also, Stan, this is again around governance, isn't it? I'm thinking about schools. If you've got something emerging, you can't just cherry pick, the one that you think is the one that's going to either damage the person that you want to damage, or is you think you can probably manage the process. I think within a school setting, people would immediately be, sort of critical and shouting quite loudly about the other issues that need to be investigated. And let's be honest, Stan, there is a list as long as your arm. About
maybe that's the choice. Maybe the choice has been, well, let's do a thorough job on this, and then we can claim transparency, claim everything. We do everything. Look at how we dealt with that. Not harm anybody that's currently in government, and step away from it.
Yeah. Well, my next issue is I've just started to see tweets of people wishing everybody to do well with their mock exams, and the students doing well. I'm thinking, I try to sort of rationalize this and think, well, okay, they're trying to create what was going to be the normal summer, but actually, I hope that and in a way, you can understand if students want to feel as though they're part of, this is what normally happens, is part of the routine. This is how you get ready. But I certainly hope that that is the reason for doing it, and to encourage greater effort, rather than this being the telling bit of evidence in terms of what grade we're going to dig.
Just going to say, Frank, do you not think that's really the case? That if the grade we give is challenged, we've got something here we can go back to and say, but
yeah, I know.
What happened in the one test that you did do?
Yeah,
good.
I know, because actually, how you construct that examination on the basis that even within your class there will be children, particularly in some northern communities, where some children would have been away a lot more often than others. Others would have been adversely affected, by home situation, whatever, how you can use that as a fair assessment of where the children are at. I know it's got to be what the children know, understand, and can do. I get that. But actually, I certainly hope that schools are using the full range of evidence and giving equal weighting, rather than, oh, well, on that Thursday you did your mock exam, that's got to be the one that trumps all the other evidence we've got about you. That isn't fair assessment as far as I'm concerned.
No, but I would argue that previously that's what's happened. If you're having a bad day on the day of your exam, that's how you judged.
Yeah.
Not this is how I performed on a bad day, but this is how you perform.
Yeah.
Presumably at your best.
Yes.
Which is why I don't like exams, even though I probably did better at exams than I would have ever done in coursework, because I never finished anything, and I could cram.
Yes.
I could learn enough to write for 15 minutes on most subjects, and that's all I knew. Sometimes in exams, when I'd finished answering the question, I had exhausted every single thing I knew about that subject in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But the person who knew loads more about it, who might be sitting next to me, still only had 15 minutes.
Yeah. Well, there was also a report that came out this morning from the EDSK, which is, I think that stands for Education Skills. It says it's a non-partisan sort of think group sort of thing, but basically it's run by a guy called Tom Richmond, and I did some digging on Companies House, and they've got 2 employees. So there's the researcher and Tom Richmond, but it's quite interesting because it's something I've been trying to do some work with in the Northern Powers Partnership, where actually I always remember an HMI telling me that think very carefully if people start talking about education and skills, because what is skills? Skills on its own is not education, but education should be skills, So for me, it was always around be careful, and in a way, what I've been trying to do in the Northern Powers Partnership is bring business into this discussion, because talking to some business leaders, they're very critical of the current assessment arrangements, and I think Tom Richmond's the EDSK report, that it's worth reading the summary. There are, I think, 13 recommendations, but basically looking at a baccalaureate, you keep going with maths and English right to the end. You don't narrow it down to the ostensibly three subjects for A level. And actually, you don't have that demarcation between academic A levels and vocational and technical work. They're all very much mixed into the baccalaureate. And I think that's really where, I haven't read the whole report. I read probably about 20 pages of it. But actually, for me, the stuff that connects young people with community and with business, that all feels, it's something that can do that. I think that would be a
Yeah.
really sort of worthwhile, broad, keeping it really as broad as possible. Because I think I've learned, and my experience was that when I left school suddenly because of a lung complaint, I went into a bank and I did my banking exams. I didn't complete my A levels because of the illness. But actually, the bank was a rotten place to work. I needed time to work out. It was when I was about 20, 21 that I actually worked out I wanted to be a teacher. So I think that, and I think A levels would have been bad for me in that way. It would have driven me down a particular route, which probably wasn't the right place to be. So I'm very keen on keeping it as broad and keeping the general vocational work is really valuable, I think, as well, particularly for children young people that don't really know what they want to do.
I always found when I was doing A levels that the subject or the A level that I enjoyed the most was just called general studies.
Yeah.
And that A level was the breadth that I think people should have had across the board.
Yes.
We talked about the kind of things that are actually important, and we wrote about the things that are important to life rather than to physics or chemistry or whatever I was doing, maths at the time. And the narrowing down of those curriculum areas by the time you get to A level means that there is no time to look at, what's the impact of this, how does that affect people. That's not part of what we're testing or doing. You're in a very narrow path at that point. And general studies for me was the get out. It was the one where you thought you weren't.
Yeah, well, the issue here, we need many more young people coming out of schools who can think critically.
Yeah.
General studies was an environment that probably, it was poo-pooed because I think there was, my children didn't enjoy it, I have to say.
No.
But actually it's all around, how much is it valued within the institution?
Yeah,
the quality of the teaching.
But the sixth form college I went to, you had to take general studies as an A level.
Yeah.
In addition to your 3 subjects. So yeah, it was.
But then you get universities saying, well, we don't count general studies.
Yeah.
Remember that? So but actually, at the end of the day, we need more young people, not less, who've got the capability to actually sort of think critically and to challenge each other.
The baccalaureate was a great idea until Michael Gove decided he knew best what subject should be in it, and more importantly, what subject shouldn't be in it.
Yes.
And so that you take the arts out of it completely, and it loses one of its main strands. The creativity is.
But actually, we're going full circle. This is here, in a way, we've got a government minister determining what baccalaureate will look like, and actually that for me is where those operational decisions need to be left to other people.
Well, don't forget Michael Gove with initial teacher training was, I instinctively know what's right. Never mind the evidence, I instinctively know.
And just thinking about lobbying, because it's all sort of linking, it was not planned this way. If Michael Gove didn't say it, then I'm sure he would get somebody who was an educationalist to say it. You know what I mean? So we can't prevent it. I just think that when a minister says it, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel as though that's the place for ministers to be engaged in. But hey ho, we've had, well, I started teaching in 1979. I think there's been more interference operationally from ministers now than I ever remember in those days.
Yeah, I remember the 2 years before that, Frank, which were glorious. 79 was it?
Well, I do remember in 79 that there was it was amazing really, because Thatcher came in 79. I started teaching. It wasn't until Tony Blair came in that actually I worked for anything other than a Conservative administration. But in the early days, in order to settle the unrest with teachers got a massive pay rise from the Tory government, a massive one that many teachers went on their first foreign holidays, on the back of the back pay and everything, or bought a decent car. But anyway, let's look to the future, Stan, because next week we have a double header, or I think we might have a double header, in that we've got a guy called Mark Borden, who is somebody you know very well.
Yeah, I've worked with Mark for 20 odd years.
Yeah, so Mark's well, he's presented. He has some. It's about change management, isn't it? About sort of.
He's a performance, performance psychologist, but his company is Mindflick, and it's about understanding you, understanding each other, and learning to move from the position you are naturally comfortable in to see the world from other people's point of view, and to get to people.
Right.
He's very well. He's got some fabulous stories, many of which he can't share. He's worked with the elite of sport, so he's lots and lots of stories.
Well, to juxtapose to that, I've the other guest is a guy called Rick Dawson, who is a school friend of mine from those days when I was in secondary school in the early 70s. And Rick and I didn't pass our 11 plus, so we went to a sort of secondary modern school in Southend. But Rick was a really creative person. You know, he was very he was witty and musical, and so Rick has lived a life he has been a music teacher, but he's lived a life through music, and he now lives in Modena in Italy. So he's agreed to play us out, Stan, with the music next week. So we've got Rick Dawson and Mark Borden. So our chat next week is likely to be in 3 parts, I think. It will be What's Caught Your Eye. We'll do that together. And then we'll do Mark separately and Rick separately, and we'll connect them together. The week after that, we've got Sam Twistleton joining us. So we haven't actually spoken much, have we, about initial teacher training, but I think we're going to get into it with Sam.
Yeah. And again, I've known Sam for too long, probably. When she was Dean of Education at the University of Cumbria, and I was in Lancashire, we worked around NQTs and initial teacher training. And of course, she's carried that on at Sheffield Hallam.
Well, the week after that, it's back to the 2 of us, the 7th of May. And then the 14th of May is the return of Paul Duckworth.
Whoa, right, I didn't know
Duckworth
that.
return.
Kept that quiet.
I know. He said, well, actually, we can keep it quiet. He said, it doesn't give Stan any time to complain or moan about it. But no, Paul was a great guest, wasn't he? He was one of our first guests, and he's coming back. It's probably getting on for a year since he joined us. So and then the week after that, just to the 21st of May, we haven't really spoken too much about early years, but we've got a woman called Max Pescatori, who is involved in the Montessori movement. So Max is going to join us for that. So we're lined up now to the end of May with a host of guests. Some of them are, right out there at the cutting edge of educational thinking, and others are good jazz musicians living in Modena. So we've got the full range. So welcome to our life. Welcome to our journey on the Frank and Stan Chat. Okay, so it's lovely to see you all, and hope you get into that static caravan next week, Stan. With
maybe.
I hope so. Anyway, so hopefully we'll see you all next week. Oh, it will be slightly later because we're having to connect all of these videos together. So we'll probably be publishing this on the Sunday or the Monday. But anyway, we look forward to you watching that and us getting involved in it. So thank you all.